America's turning point. There's really no way back anymore. We've already gone through the crisis and we didn't die. Well, at least we can be thankful for that, by the way. Now comes a long, difficult, and painful, but still a recovery. Never in the history of the United States has the Secretary of the Interior, or any minister for that matter, ever spoken about a governor of one of the states directly at a cabinet meeting. I don't know, is this crazy governor a complete idiot, or was he doing all this on purpose? And the president, would he have answered that he's both a fool and a thief at the same time? It's a pity, the state is wonderful, and I feel sorry for the people, and all this isn't happening behind closed doors in some office, where they can say whatever they want, right? But at an open meeting, a discussion with journalists who filled the room. They weren't just talking about some random administrator from some random state, but about a person who, one of the two main parties in the United States, had just nominated this person as a candidate for vice president of the United States. The vice president is, as they say, just one breath away, and became president. Just to be clear, we're talking about the governor of Minnesota, Tim Walz. Probably yes, it's better to pronounce it that way. Who didn't notice when $8 billion was stolen from the state budget, by the way, or maybe even more, and that 150 new immigrants from Somalia arrived? 80% of them immediately go on state welfare. That's it. And besides that, it turns out that more than half of these 150,000 got their status using fake documents, as was discovered after an inspection. The first inspection showed this, meaning the staff didn't check anything at all. Who is he, this? Who are you? Well, by the way, how could he even be pushed through to become governor? Well, he's such a silly, cute guy. Maybe that's why. I don't know. Yeah, well, it's not really clear. Is he an idiot, a thief, or an enemy? It's normal when the head of state can be either insane. Honestly, I think he's not right in the head. He's either an idiot, a thief, or an enemy. Yeah, by the way, it seems that he's an insane idiot, a thief, and an enemy. Well, by the way, it would be strange, so to speak. Excuse me, of course, dear elite. But it would be strange if congressmen, senators, and governors weren't. Vorobi. I think you really need to have a very, very serious moral code. There it is, right? No one's watching, and with a single pen stroke. Okay, fine. So Tim Walsh is actually such a typical front man that it just makes you feel uneasy.
So Associated Press reports that the raid is targeting Somali illegals.
So, after the cancellation of temporary protected status for citizens of several countries, President Trump seems to be taking new steps to tighten immigration laws, which are said to have been violated for decades in Minnesota. There, sanctuary cities still encourage those without legal permission to live in America indefinitely.
President Trump just spoke harshly about the Somali community in Minnesota, but this community says it will not back down. Local lawmakers say they've already heard about several arrests in Minnesota over the past couple of days.
See, Dr. Sug, you have an incapable governor, you have a corrupt governor, he's incompetent, he should be ashamed. This is a wonderful land, this wonderful state. Right now, it's just hell.
We won't give up, we're not afraid, we're not going anywhere, this is our home, this is our country.
You told me to study Minnesota.
To study Minnesota and their
visa fraud and their programs. 50% of them are fraudulent, which means that this crazy Governor Walz is either an idiot or did it on purpose. Guys are asking for a passport to get a green card. Why have I been here since 1994? I was only 3 years old when I came here. This is my home, and this has to stop.
We need to restore the country, you know.
The country is on the brink.
It could get bad. We're on the brink. The state of Minnesota said that I didn't break any laws, and as for the newcomers, I didn't break any laws at all. They told us that 95% of Somalis are United States citizens and therefore obtained their status legally without breaking any rules. Well, not to mention the laws, but stealing. What can you do? There are some bad individuals who can be found in equal numbers in any group of people. Is that true? The only thing is that 80% of these people are on government assistance, even though they came here and signed that they wouldn't ask for government help. If everything is fine, in order, and legal, why are they so nervous? Yeah, well, that means they'll check. Everyone will calm down and they'll let them go home. So far, as long as you're still United States citizens, yes, for now, while you Democrats aren't in power, no one has been sent anywhere without trial or investigation, or had their status taken away under some kind of emergency measures.
ICE has been making arrests in Minnesota for several weeks now, removing federal fugitives from all over the world with criminal and gang ties from the streets of this state. For now, they're being pursued by the same crowds from sanctuary cities that follow them across the country, just like in a typical sanctuary. The leaders of this place are already lying, and they're already lying to their citizens to stir them up and make them rush at federal agents during arrests as soon as they see them.
I want to make it clear to the community, if you see something like this and you don't know if it's law enforcement, call 911 and you should provide as much information as possible. Because let's not forget, not long ago there was a tragedy in our state caused by someone pretending to be a law enforcement officer. So please, let's make it clear. Everyone should report this, and we remind our officers of their duty to intervene.
This is what the Minneapolis police chief, appointed by the mayor, says. It is your duty to intervene, your duty to continue, even if you have no idea why a uniformed federal government officer is arresting someone. If you think something illegal is happening, you are obligated to intervene. You are obligated. It is your civic duty to continue, and it is the civic duty of an officer, if someone interferes, to shoot you, to continue. And the chief also says that we, the police, will fight against the feds.
We, the police, will fight. If this happens, we will be talking about the first case in American history when the police tried to forcibly stop the federal government, which could become the beginning of a civil war in the United States. And all this is to protect fugitives and criminals who, according to the same chief, may be involved in other crimes against real residents of Minnesota. But it gets even worse.
Honestly, don't think I've ever lived in a whole bunch of countries in my life. I heard that the local authorities gave orders to their armed subordinates to resist the actions of the federal law enforcement agency, which is also armed and carrying out its duties, and they would decide that someone is trying to stop them from doing their job with weapons in hand. But, ladies and gentlemen, we thought that was rock bottom, and when we were sure everything would work out, we heard a knock from below, showing there was still further to fall. Here. That's because he doesn't like thieves, swindlers, and lawbreakers, and it's terrible. He wants to kick those scoundrels out of our country. But then, honestly, it turns out that I'm a racist. A bunch of my friends, relatives, listeners. I'm even sure that among those who are watching me right now, there are a couple of other racists who want the same thing. Xenophobes.
That this is xenophobic behavior, and
oh Lord,
we are going to fight against it. America has a rich history of fighting against and stopping such individuals who continue to divide people.
Everyone knows that the president is a racist. What a ridiculous statement. That's such a biased statement, and it's a disgusting slander that, as we all know, isn't true. And it won't work because immigration law outweighs everything that this person just mentioned. The law doesn't care where a person is from if they're in the country legally. If that's the case, immigration and customs enforcement can't do anything, which, according to opponents of this operation, means that 95% of the people living here have absolutely nothing to worry about because they're already United States citizens. Apparently, this doesn't affect anyone. So why are people so outraged? Why stir up the masses and tell them that evil is coming to their neighborhood? In fact, if this is happening, if this terrible operation is about to take place and everyone is in danger, then what you're about to see shouldn't have happened at all.
What it was about.
I don't know, these guys are just taking me like that. I'm a citizen of this country. They're holding me, detaining me here. I don't know what they're doing.
They said they're interviewing me, but I don't know why I'm here. So these guys supposedly met with the immigration officers. They checked their IDs and left. Since they're citizens, they have nothing to worry about. I understand that maybe someone might be a little worried if they get stopped and have to identify themselves. But listen, if you're not a criminal, what's the problem? You know, I've had encounters with the police where they asked me to identify myself. I wasn't committing any crimes. No problem. I identify myself. And it should be the same here? But let's ask another question. Whose fault is it that these gentlemen, United States citizens, were stopped on the streets of their own city? Is it law enforcement's fault for trying to keep people safe, or their leaders' fault? Sanctuaries that told criminals, this is a great place to live, a great place to come and hide from the federal government? Who is to blame, and how accurate is the 95% citizenship figure?
A sensational immigration and customs enforcement raid in Minneapolis-St. Paul revealed that half of the immigrants committed immigration fraud.
As we already discussed, 50% of Somalis in Minnesota entered the United States illegally, and 80% of all Somali immigrants immediately became a burden on us. At the same time, many of these same Somalis carried out the biggest financial fraud against social agencies in United States history. Well, there's absolutely nothing for federal agents to do in Minnesota, right? Absolutely nothing. A complete waste of time.
50% of immigrants committed immigration fraud in Minneapolis.
I want this number to sink into your mind for you to be fully aware of it. Terrible sorry, Russian.
You know, you asked me to look into Minnesota, their visa fraud and programs. 50% of them are fraudulent. And that means this crazy Governor Walz is either an idiot or did it on purpose, and I believe he's both, sir.
Here, Christina Walz thinks that Governor Tim Walz, well, the former candidate, I already said the vice president of the United States from the Democratic Party, is both an idiot and a thief.
He brought people there illegally who should never have been here. They said they weren't who they really are, said they were married to their brothers or to someone else. Fraudulent visa applications were filed under government programs. They took hundreds of billions of dollars from taxpayers, and we will remove them and get our money back. And next year, we will make sure that we put only those who love this country in leadership positions. And I think
that Tim Uberum loves this country. Where else could he so easily steal so much? In other places, it's both harder and the amounts will be much smaller. I think, well, of course, Tim Walsh loves, even adores America. Well, at least for this.
Defending those in the country illegally is justified since local government benefits for them are limited. Money doesn't grow on trees, which means there are fewer resources for those who aren't criminals. But besides that, fraud in Minnesota apparently gets much worse because it's under the governor's supervision. A $1 billion scheme allowed funds intended for needy children, the hungry, and other aid programs to be directed to groups that then took the money out of the country without providing any benefit. Poof, the money disappeared, and we're talking about $1 billion.
Overall, much more fraud and theft have already been found. About 8 billion. Like I said, I wonder if Tim will still love the country while he's in prison, or will he love it less? No, will he love the country less when he's behind bars?
Something absolutely colossal has happened in Minnesota politics, and it's about to shake the whole country. Their incumbent governor, who's running for a third term, has found himself at the center of a fraud scandal so shocking that federal prosecutors are calling it the biggest pandemic scam in American history.
Here he is, Tim Walsh Arlecchino, who somehow ended up in politics. Tim Walsh
is facing his toughest political battle yet. A scandal in the very center of Minneapolis has shaken Minnesota politics to its core, and the eccentric Walsh is at the very epicenter of it. Federal prosecutors have charged 7 or 8 people in what they call the largest pandemic scam in American history. At the center of the scheme is a nonprofit organization called Feeding Our Future, which falsely claimed it provided 91 million meals to needy children and received over $250 million in federal funds. The ringleader, Emiba, was convicted in March along with her accomplice, Salim Said, who ran the Safari restaurant and embezzled more than $16 million. If you don't know, the Safari restaurant is connected to Ilhan Omar. She not only filmed a video for the restaurant, but apparently also held her victory party there after being elected to Congress in 2018. But that's just the beginning. An autism treatment program was created for $14 million through fake invoices and kickback schemes targeting the Somali community in Minneapolis. Then there's the Minnesota Housing Stabilization Program, designed to help seniors and people with disabilities find housing. When it was launched in 2020, officials estimated it would cost about $2 million a year, but by last year its cost had soared to a staggering $104 million. Federal agents charged 8 people in September for submitting fake and inflated bills while providing virtually no services. Chairman of the House Oversight Committee, James Comer, has just launched an investigation into Walz's actions in connection with the crisis. Republicans claim billions vanished, while the governor has done almost nothing.
While he was dancing, jumping around in videos, laughing, waving his arms, blowing bubbles, and apparently taking kickbacks. Or maybe he didn't do anything at all. Did it not for money, but for fame, for recognition, for applause. He's such a fool, you don't even need to pay him. Tim repeats, I didn't know anything. 400 times. 400 times his employees came to him with complaints about theft and documents about corruption. And Tim, what about him? Well, first of all, of course, maybe he forgot about it. He's such a fool, right? But Tim really seemed to be covering for the gangsters. He was working as their protection, and of course, he didn't know anything.
Tim Walz is fully responsible for this massive fraud. In Minnesota, he was warned in advance, hoping for cooperation and prevention of this. Instead, we got the opposite response. Tim Walz systematically retaliated against whistleblowers through surveillance, threats, and repression. And the message went on to describe a corrupt system where leaders appointed by Tim Walz deliberately ignored laws and regulations to cover up reports of fraud, even threatening the families of those whistleblowers who dared to speak out, not just
kept silent. He persecuted those who tried to stop the thieves. So much so that Tima is mentioned on television and podcasts without fear of prosecution. That's how it is.
This talentless, corrupt fool from the governor's mansion in Minnesota.
An incompetent idiot from Minnesota. And no one will think to hold the commentator accountable. Try to object or try to prove it in court. He is a competent, reasonable leader.
We appreciate that, I must say. However, it sounds like something out of a spy movie. People going through security and boarding planes with suitcases stuffed with millions of dollars in cash. Tell us, what did you actually see during your time as a Transportation Security Administration agent there?
I've actually seen a lot of things, but the most shocking was exactly that. I saw suitcases stuffed with millions of dollars in cash. And the couriers were always the same people, traveling in pairs, and they passed through the checkpoint. And that just completely amazed me. The first time you open a suitcase and see millions of dollars in cash. Typically, a security service employee would arrive and check law enforcement officers' documents. I don't know what questions they were asked, but their IDs were always documented, and probably their plane tickets too. So there must be a trace of this somewhere, and I suppose with all the cameras in the airport, right? M? If they started there, they could probably find every person who brought money through the checkpoint.
Obviously, it's suspicious, if not alarming, considering there's a pattern here, millions of dollars flying out of Minneapolis. And you think this was happening about every week? Did I get that right?
So it seemed like this was happening every week. The suitcases would arrive and it was always the same. The handwriting was the same, always. Two Somalis traveling in pairs. Sometimes both of them had suitcases with them. So our process as Transportation Security Administration agents was as follows. We would confiscate this bag, then take them to a special separate screening room, and there we would open the suitcase itself and make sure there was nothing inside except huge stacks of cash. And a law enforcement officer would come, maybe question them, and would definitely take a picture of their identification. And I suppose their plane ticket too, I'm not sure, so there's a record, but by the way, this must be documented somewhere, and there are cameras all over the airport. I think if they want to find all that money, they should start with the airport.
Once a week or more often through airport security. The border. There, what's it called? Two Somalians were smuggling cash, usually with one and sometimes two suitcases. A suitcase of the size they showed us, filled with $100 bills, could hold $20 million. One wasn't enough, so the Somalians carried two such suitcases. Well, we don't know if they were completely full or not, but one wasn't enough. The Somalians had all the documents and certificates needed to export these amounts. Can you imagine what kind of certificates and from whom you need to get in order to take out $1 million, $500,000, $20 million? It's just crazy, really. No one except the very top levels of the government, either federal or state, since a state is like a separate country, could give permission, which worked every time they moved this cash across the border. So when Liz Jeekson was serving at the Minneapolis airport, she worked there, as she says, for 4 years. Well, 4 years, that's 232 weeks. Let's say 20 million weekly, that's 4 billion, that's 4 billion. Even if maybe they missed a week here and there, we're told that 8 billion was stolen. In total, they kept half at home to buy themselves houses, cars, and other small gifts, and sent the other half back home to Somalia. You might ask, to whom in Somalia? It seems that it was sent to the Somali branch of Al-Qaeda, which is called Al-Shabaab. In the United States, it is officially recognized as a terrorist organization specializing in killing American citizens. It was sent from Rastoyalis. It's kind of a beautiful cycle of money. Well, you can't really say it's natural, but on this planet, American taxpayers are paying for it. Well, thank you. So that's Volshu and Ilkan Omar. Their own, so to speak, assassination attempts on themselves, killing themselves. Obama-Biden organized a remarkable system. And, well, Tim Volsh took a little part in it.
There is a huge amount of evidence that Ilkan Omar was involved in this, and there is already enough evidence that Tim Volsh was involved in this, and the Attorney General, the person responsible for the law in Minnesota, Kit Ellison. But let's move on to some information and some of the ways they laundered this money and then sent it back to Somalia. According to the New York Post, Ilhan Omar held parties at a key restaurant in the scheme, knew a now convicted owner, and had a staffer convicted as well, both sentenced for stealing millions. Omar introduced a bill that led to a $250 million fraud, but claims she knew nothing about it. Ilhan Omar declared her net worth as $65,000 before coming to Congress. Let me clarify. Her net worth was $65,000 when she joined Congress. $1,000 according to her own declarations. And now listen to this from the New York Post. Representative Ilhan Omar reported a net worth of up to $30 million in her latest financial disclosure, a document filed just a few months after Congress. Omar called the claim that she is a millionaire ridiculous and completely false.
Naturally, Ilhan Omar came up with an entire story about how they made $30 million in 5 years. By the way, $30 million in 5 years is quite a lot. That's $6 million a year. Someone's lying. Maybe her about the 5 years, but it doesn't matter. Someone invested money in her husband's 2 businesses and then just forgot about it, apparently. Just forgot they invested such a small amount, disappeared, didn't even leave a phone number or any way to contact them, so the money just stayed there. Of course, I'm joking, but the real story is just as fantastic, only a bit more complicated. So someone came and invested in her husband's investment firm, even though he had never been involved in investments, never dealt with investments. So if that's the company's profit, here's 30 million, ha 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 ha. Well, if it's 30 million in profit, that means they earned it, right? Sorry for repeating myself, but you'll soon see my point. So, they earned it. It's not like they were just given 30 million, they actually earned 30 million. Let's say a broker and investor gets anywhere from 2 to 20%, right? A crazy amount, let's say. 20% of the profit. So, what does 30 million mean? If that's 20%, then the total profit is 150 millions. 20% is 30 million, so 100% equals 150 million. To earn 150 million in profit, not turnover, that's the total for the investor and broker. So hedge funds usually make somewhere between 6 to 10% a good hedge fund per year. And let's say the Omar couple were very lucky, fortunate, and made 10%, so 150 million is 10% of 1.5 billion. So the story they're trying to tell us is that someone came and brought 1.5 billion to people, or to a person who has never done anything like this in their life, never done anything like this before. They gave 1.5 billion and said, well, just like Cantor Biden, it's exactly the same story, and I think it's the same amount too. Also 1.5 billion from the Chinese. Right? So 1.5 billion to invest. He invested, he made 10% from that. So he took his brokerage fee. So here are the percentages. And he got $30 million. Over what period, you might ask? Let's figure it out so it's clear. So they gave him $1.5 billion. And for their services, they kept 20 million for themselves. That's wonderful for people who have never done this before. And when they were given 1.5 billion, they only had $42 in their bank account. You heard right. Not 42 million thousand or 420,000, but just $42. The company is called Rousley Capital. And on January 1, 2025, they had $42.44 in their account. The husband, whose name is Tim, has 2 more companies. Maybe the money was there and somehow got transferred here. Yes, so there were $10 in one account. And besides that, he also had a company called the Winery Company. And there was something like Istcree there. Yes, Istcree. $650, I can't guarantee the exact amount, maybe with some change. So no one in either her family or his family was involved in winemaking. And both this company and Tim have been sued, by the way, for fraud by people whom they offered to invest in this company. Maybe they invested and were instantly deceived, just as expected.
In this country, we need exactly the kind of moratorium that President Trump talked about on immigration from third world countries. Until we heal as a nation, solve the problems of education, healthcare, public safety, assimilation, and culture. What they don't teach you in school is that from 1920 to 1970, there was negative migration. For half a century, there was negative migration, and the foreign population decreased by 40%. In half a century. During the same period, the United States population doubled naturally. It was a melting pot where a unified national identity was forged. They went through the Depression together, went through world wars together, and landed on the moon together. This great period in American history occurred during a time of negative migration.
That's very interesting. I didn't know there was negative migration during those years. But even if we set that aside for a second, everything he's referring to, all those things we accomplished together as a country, and nobody cared about that. Was the guy working at National Aeronautics and Space Administration a black Asian, a white Jew, a Christian, an atheist, or someone else? As long as they took us to the moon.
I honestly don't care if my shoes are made by an Italian with an amazing baritone or a one-legged Filipino. I don't care. My mailman, whether he's a mountain Jew or gay, and at school, I honestly don't care if my grandchildren are taught by an elderly Japanese woman or a 2-meter-tall black man. I want quality, convenience, and, if possible, well, relatively cheap. Maybe someone else prefers the opposite. Some people like things expensive. Different people want different things, but I want us all not to hate each other. We would be happy about the victory of the United States national team, not the team from Somalia or, let's say, Ukraine. Yes, we would be sad when a helicopter with our guys crashes, and we would call ourselves Americans, not Somali Americans, not black, French, Belarusian, or Lebanese Americans. And yes, I understand that among us there will definitely be both bad and good people, both kind and evil ones. But the very first thing that connects us is a shared piece of space, and that's why we have common concerns, common troubles, and common problems. And it really seems that when millions come from, let's say, neighboring countries, we have almost nothing in common with them. They have their own things among themselves, brought from the country they came from, their country of origin. I have my own things too, but they've long been at least half American, maybe even 3/4 American by now. And for my children and grandchildren, they're simply American. We're just simple. And who else? Who else, of course, Americans? Where, so to speak, many live. Somalis or Russians, Ukrainians or Latinos, and, so to speak, Mexicans are separate, others are separate. Yes, they have this, but who else doesn't? Because even when they're told to come to a demonstration with our flags, they come with Mexican flags to this demonstration. They speak Spanish or Haitian or Somali, and some speak Armenian. By the way, and after years of patience, after years of growing frustration, the population of the United States, over 300 million people, has reached the breaking point. A turning point has come. We don't want them here if they don't want to live in our country by our laws, with our morals, our way. They came to our home, some of them asked to come, some lied their way in, yes, and now they hate us, they're jealous. I get that. But they also hate us. Let them hate us from somewhere else, from abroad. That place is across the ocean and sea, beyond 7 mountains. Let them go and live in the culture they like, the one they're trying to bring here and replace our culture with theirs. By the way, this also applies to my Russian-speaking, Ukrainian-speaking, and Armenian-speaking neighbors. If you are planning to milk us, rob, scam, deceive, cheat insurance companies so that because of you, the rates go up and we have to pay more. If you are going to live by the rules of the world that fell apart in your own home because you behaved like that there, then pack up your habits, whether in a suitcase, a bundle, or a bag. Get out of here, scram. Because liars and scoundrels who came here, we don't want them to sit on our necks. You have been messing with us all this time for years. And now, gentlemen, receive a court summons and a notice, and within a week, please leave the country you decided to squeeze out. In Russian, in Ukrainian, in Moldovan, as they say, good riddance.